eyes wide open on this. And speaking of Mike from around the world, joining us from somewhere, located somewhere around the world, it's Mike from around the world.
God bless you, Pastor Paul. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, Mike. It's great to have you tonight. Great to have you.
Good.
Okay, Mike, you said it 2 weeks ago that we would be talking about the sun, and at noon today, X-class 2.8, massive solar flare, the largest in 6 years. Mike, is that Planet X? Is things going to get worse?
Yeah, unfortunately. I was about 2 days off, though. That was the date for today's activity was actually marked December 12th. Next episode, December 17th and 18th. And, of course, December 23rd, December 25th, or 26th, January 4th, and January 11th, January 21st, or 27th. I guess the real question is, right, how can anybody know what the sun is doing?
That's what I want to know. How in the world can you sit there and give me dates like that? So how do you know what the sun is doing before it happens? What's causing that?
We have an external influence. We do. We really do. And that external influence is not going anywhere. It's going to cause more and more issues with how the Earth operates. And everything will begin to convey that.
So, Mike, when you say the external influence, and you know, I keep hollering, you know, Planet X, people holler Nibiru, dwarf star, you know, planet number 9. The media has changed its name so many times, or the binary system. So this influence, this huge influence, that's even though it might be billions of miles away, and it's got a bunch of moons, maybe 5, maybe 7, I don't know, maybe more. But how can it be certain times that is there certain pulses, like pulsations coming from it that we know about the time they're going to hit the sun?
In fact, it's exactly like some of the experiments happening at CERN. It's just like electronics, based on physics. Of course, celestial mechanics, you're dealing with balloons, numbers in a lot of cases, but it is in a sense, anybody who works with electronics can get a good handle on what's happening. Our sun, whenever it sends out a solar flare, right, it's actually, every time it does this, it will strike the heliosphere in the exact spot of its weakness. Well, that same thing happens within a capacitor. That same thing happens in a circuit. And so you're looking at perfect balance, right? And so with external influences, you're going to have a weakening of the greater magnetic ball around this solar system, right? And it's going to begin to pull in a specific direction. The solar flares of the sun will become more and more precise as far as a general location they're going to cover. And of course, in that power or energy exchange will begin to take place, a photonic exchange. That will become more prominent. People will begin to, it's going to affect many things on Earth, many things. And CERN is that, you know, they're working at breakneck pace to mitigate certain things because they know what's happening. They know the history. They know what all the archaeologists have dug up. They know these things. And so they're going to do everything they can do to mitigate certain things we're going to face.
So you bring in CERN, which is great because that's one of the questions. Matter of fact, tonight here in North Carolina, we had 19 people that gathered with us for a wonderful meal at the Cracker Barrel, and I asked them all, I said, if you had a chance to ask right now, Mike around the world, a question, tell me now. Well, it kind of stunned them all. There was only 2 or 3, I think, that actually could come up with a question on the spot, but they all said when they watched, they wish I would ask certain questions. Well, one of them said, is there anything going on at CERN? So you bring CERN up now. Are you saying that CERN they're purposely weakening our magnetosphere, even though they
No, not
know.
purposely.
But they know about this binary system, though, right?
Right, right. They know about that. So what are they going to try and do? Save themselves, right? Everything they're doing right now is trying to save themselves.
Are you serious?
Just keep that mindset,
Okay.
and you'll begin to see many things will begin to make sense, and they will take away from the general populace, or do whatever they have to do to save themselves. For example, oversight. You don't have a lot of oversight with CERN, right?
No.
Why? Because it's exploratory science, right, in the quantum area. So who's going to come up there? What civilian is going to say, hey, you can't do that because of this? Right? There are no determinate factors or consequences people can name that are scientifically based and proven that people will face. And so there's little to no oversight, right? They're going to continue to do this. That's just like some of the chambers they were building. They needed to know the precise happenings of our atmosphere. And so they replicated, you could say, the atmospheres of Earth in a chamber. And this was a mandate. They had to know what would absolutely take place, how long certain processes would take. I mean, they have it down to a science. Why? Because they know what's coming. Pastor Paul, we discussed this, what, about 10 years ago, I think it was, and about, or somewhere along those lines, concerning CERN and what they were trying to do and how they had to know about the atmosphere because conditions of the Earth are changing. Right now, for example, do you know that a severe drought has struck? They're not telling the numbers. These meteorologists who work are given, they have certain things they cannot discuss. They can't talk about them. And right now, the water levels are disappearing all over the place, although we have, rain and snow. But the water levels are leaving, and salt water is starting to take its toll, right? Starting to come in where other water did exist. That's going to be real bad this summer. Extremely bad this summer, right? So people are going to have water problems. Do you think they're going to talk about that to anybody? No, right?
No.
I wouldn't be surprised about 5 years ago. Now, this is just my observation. Normally, when the Lord impresses things upon people, it's always about 5 years before something happens. And I can almost guarantee 5 years ago, people were wondering and having dreams and intuitions about water, something with the water, and that they were pressed to make sure that they have water, right? And I know it's just that because we're running into a time now where water is going to become one of those commodities that are highly regulated, right?
Right. It will be.
And the something's going to happen to the water. That is bound. Something's going to happen to the water. We live in a society now where terrorists are running all over the place, but there are different types of terrorists, right? Something's going to happen to the basic things that we utilize, unfortunately, right? It's just naive to think that nothing is going to happen. Not like that. It will, and people are going to have to face that. Now, hopefully, everybody did their homework according to what the Lord gave them an unction towards concerning water, so that they can continue to get water even in troubled times.
When you bring up the water and the saltwater intrusion, these are things you have talked about probably for about 10 years. We did a webinar where you actually showed us a map of what the Earth, what America could kind of look like. And that's a map that went back all the way into the Navy in the 1960s, but it's been altered some to when you brought out a really good one. You've talked about intrusion. You've talked about the binary system, the volatility of the sun. We've talked about droughts that are going to be unbelievable. Yet we're going to have massive flooded rains and rain bombs. And then, so is all of these things, and there biblical scripture that backs it, but are all of these things, they're not, there's no way to stop them, is what I'm hearing. There's no way to really stop it.
No, it's part of a process we're going to have to undergo. And that's just the beginning portions of it. The rest is, a complete. Can you imagine humidity all over the planet at about 10%?
That's
right?
crazy.
We also live in a time where all these mysteries, they're not going to be mysteries, Pastor Paul. They're not. All these like UFO topics, aliens, secret machines, and this, that, and the other, all that's coming out into the open. They're not going to care to show anybody this stuff because everybody's mindset is changing, right?
Right.
And, I have to put some of this on CERN, I do, because they're tampering with what people would call dimensions, right? Now, God put things in perfect balance. Anybody who studies physics or electronics, they're in the engineering side, they understand that everything is in perfect balance, right? If you go pull something out of a demonic realm, then something else is going to have to fill that void. You can't empty out anything God balanced. And if anything comes out of this realm, going into that demonic realm, something is coming back to this realm. Every time they run these experiments, kind of like that PowerPoint that I gave you a long time ago.
Yep.
It will begin to change human behavior. And what have we seen since that time, right?
Right.
It's been a time of darkness spreading in the minds of so many people. It's almost people are they are nuts. People are nuts. And they can't see. They cannot see that they're not sober, right? They can't see that. So it's a dark influence in the earth right now. It's about to get a lot worse because this inbound thing, this binary star, is not coming by itself. And we're not talking about forces of physics, right? Some of the language when people discuss spiritual things, a lot of novices have tried to look into it and become experts, but they haven't come from that side of existence, right? And so a lot of people think they know about the spiritual realm and this, that, and the other, but in the quantum area, you start to learn a lot about this other realm, these what they call dimensions. I would call it part of the bubble. And I reference the bubble because something is wrapped around this planet, right?
Right.
That is very difficult for, let's just say it's a spiritual bubble. And it's almost like we're surrounded by demonic entities and evil influence all around us. And outside of that, who knows what that is, but we certainly have a dimension that they're pulling things from. We're talking about energy that could fit in a sugar cube, right? That could power a city. This is what they're pulling out.
That's crazy. I know you brought that up before. I mean...
Yep. Well, reports are going to come out now that one of the major things is anti-gravity.
Yeah,
That's coming out. The reports are coming out. The proof of concept is coming out. The prototype machines are going to be shown. We're talking about real anti-gravity, right? Not magnetism, not that stuff. But what they're really tampering with, Pastor Paul, is utilizing all this material that's wrapped around us. They found out how to reorder it, right? Let's just put it that way. So in essence, when you live every day of your life, we see fish swim. We're doing the same thing, right? We just don't recognize the fluid around us.
Okay.
We've learned how to utilize that fluid.
Okay.
Right?
So I see the concept. I see it. So
they've learned how to utilize it, and this fluid is everywhere.
Is it plasma? Everywhere. Now, are you talking dark matter, or are you talking plasma?
This is more in line with, I wouldn't call it dark matter. I know they called it that at one point. Well, I guess for the sake of conversation.
Antimatter.
You could call it dark matter, or let's just say matter that's in the spiritual realm.
Okay.
Right. So that spiritual realm means a realm we can't see. Right. So these guys are tampering with some real. I think that people at the Pentagon call it voodoo. That's what they call it, voodoo.
They call it voodoo.
They call it voodoo at the Pentagon.
And is it because it's something they can't deal with, or is it because it's scary to them or spooky, or what?
Oh yeah, it's spooky. It is spooky, and that's one of the descriptive words in that too, right? But they call it voodoo stuff is what they call it.
Okay.
Because you can't really explain it, with the things that we're used to. So they're utilizing this. This is why this UFO stuff is coming out. Well, one reason why, but they're not going to hide this stuff because they're going to start utilizing it. Why? Because the Earth is changing. very fast, right? It's changing fast. And I think that as things begin to progress, you're going to see people make power plays, right? You're going to see folks, countries make power plays. It seems like no country respects other countries in this day and age. Why? Because those governments know, they know things they haven't discussed with everybody, right? If they can't release, for example, they can't release certain classified things in one country and not expect everybody else to know it because we have the internet.
Right.
So it has to be a international co-op type release. And believe me, that's coming.
All right.
And when it comes, we're going to be under, well, let's just say under a new type of lifestyle for everybody, you know, because these things will be exposed. And when you take something out of the realm of fantasy and you tell someone it's real, your brain's not going to want to believe it, number one. You could see things right before your eyes, and your brain would still not believe it, right? But when you see it every day, that's when it sinks in. You're going to have to deal with things. People are going to have to deal with things they normally wouldn't deal with. And during this time, Paul, this is why all the financial systems and everything else, they're set up to change. Because they know this time of duress is coming.
Yeah.
And they're doing everything they can do, though, to save themselves from that ultimate time. They know it's right around the corner.
So
they know it's around the corner.
They know, and you know, and folks. By the way, when you talk about this, they're trying to save themselves from what they know is coming because they can see it. They've got deep space probes. I mean, they got this thing. They've got it figured out. The Bible told us that this exact same thing that they see coming is going to happen. So. A reason you're saying that's a reason for a new world order, for a one world government, for a new banking system, a new digital economic system, a higher class, a ruling class, and then a slave class, a mentality, all of it to gather resources. Let me ask you a question, because we got today from one of our sources, it's an insider who's been right every time. So it's unbelievable. This individual sent us a info today to say, hey, look, you need to know, and you can run it by Mike. China attacked an abandoned U.S. base in Alaska. They thought the base was abandoned. Apparently, we have troops there, hidden or underground or whatever, and so they're involved in a shots fired, an altercation between Chinese and American troops in an abandoned military outpost or base in Alaska. Is there anything, Mike, that you can say about that, or anything that you know? Well,
Pastor, there's been a lot of incursions lately.
Okay.
A lot. And it's only a matter of time before certain hostilities beyond political speech and talk kind of spill over into the public's eye. Now if that incident is real, because I can't say anything about that.
All right, I get you. Right.
Because something like that that would be used for leverage. That would be used for propaganda. That would be used for a million things. So, but keep in mind those things, just like that, they happen more often than anyone knows. And this is just in the last year. It's been happening like that.
Okay.
More than anybody knows.
Okay.
And what I'm saying is, you could be in a town. For example, you could be in a town, and possibly you notice a police chase with armored vehicles you never saw before, but you'll never pay attention to who they're chasing.
Right.
Those things have happened already. Everybody knows those balloons came right over the USA.
Exactly.
Everybody knows that. So even before, why did they didn't send those balloons? Because somehow their GPS was messed up. That's a GPS guided system.
Right.
That's a GPS guide. That was part of something else.
Well, let me ask you, before you say it, and real quick, and that is, would they have ever told us about it had this photographer in Montana hadn't spotted it? They never told us, would they?
Well, there would have been, 12 more.
Oh, see?
12 more.
12 more. So if some, as you said, the internet, if some of us out here hear something, see something, spot something, they may have to tell us something that they weren't going to. Just like this this confrontation in Alaska.
That's right.
They may in the next 2-3 days have to say something, since I'm talking about it tonight.
Yeah, they will. They will have to, because once the people find out about things, right, they're going to start to press the government for some type of answer, especially if it's military. And so they normally stay out ahead of it. So don't be shocked if they come out and say, something is all lies, right? Sadly enough, the majority of people still believe in mainstream media. And so they will get out ahead of it or call it something else quickly, or who knows, if they're angry at China enough, they may come out with the part of the truth. I doubt if they'll come out with the whole truth.
Yeah. Okay.
But those things, Pastor Paul, they're happening more often now.
Okay.
Than not. And I'm talking about the USA and China and the Koreas, right? The Koreas. The Koreas. And Australia has a bit of an issue too. And so does Indonesia, the Philippines. So
okay, are they having
Indonesia?
Okay, that sounds like all of those people are having a problem with China, though, from what I'm understanding.
It's a reordering.
It's a what?
Reordering is going to take place. Everything is going to be reordered, right? There are alliances linking up right now, right?
Yeah.
Now, they only needed some sort of a trigger, some common cause to get behind to solidify some of these alliances. And that happens to be Israel.
Oh, let's talk about Israel just for a minute, okay? I mean, we got two things. The UN just had a big vote. Thank God the Security Council voted one veto by the United States, but the General Assembly went ahead and voted anyway. It's non-binding, and they voted 153 to 17, with 26 abstaining, to forcibly demand and stop and cause a Gaza ceasefire. And then a Turkish lawmaker stood up in front of the Turkish parliament and criticized and cursed Israel, and then finally made the statement, his last words of his life: Israel will suffer the wrath of Allah. He then instantly fell over and died of a heart attack. He died today. He had it, and this happened the day before. So what's going on here with the UN? Is there pressure building against Israel, even besides not just the UN, but I mean, is it coming from everywhere now?
The entire world right now, right, is highly sympathetic to Gazan people, right?
Right.
Palestinians. They're highly sensitive. So they are in the process of forcing Israel. They always make known their position first, publicly, right? Now, people are going to talk about that. This is what will happen. Based on the feedback of those conversations, they will go forward. Even the American administration will change its views if the people are in support of Israel being stopped by force, right? So we all know what's happening. There are more people out there who, it's not that they've taken a strange stance because of prosecution of people who were outspoken against Israel, right? Kind of stopped a lot of people from speaking their minds. But we all know that people they're tired of, they call it senseless fighting. And when they have these stories where they show Israel, utilizing phosphorus, or Israel stripping soldiers, this, that, and the other, they see those as, grievous hostilities, and they're not going to go for that. And so they made this public. In a couple of days, they're going to reconvene and have more talks about this. Pastor, they will disarm Israel.
Yes, I heard you.
Ultimately disarm Israel. And it's not going to take a long time either.
No.
It may seem like that right now, but it will not take a long time. And when this happens, that's when the USA we're going to have to be on severe watch. Because if we take a position with the world, we're going to seem weak, right?
Yes.
We already vetoed the UN, but that's not going to work because you have NATO heads of NATO saying that, Israel has to stop, right?
Right.
So we know in the Bible that God will plead with everybody down there, right?
Yes.
There's a part in the Bible where it says God pleads
Yes.
with fire, brimstone, right?
Yes.
With great hail. That's how he pleads.
Yes.
And so, in a situation like that, where's BP Earthwatch and Gil Broussard? Because this is is starting to overlap. Right? These things are starting to overlap. And there's some very real, there's a very real threat coming our way. And we're not going to miss it. And it's not going to destroy the earth. No. But it's going to cause some conditions nobody is used to. Right? Nobody. We're talking a meteor storm is most certainly coming. And here's something new. Not only is one meteor storm coming, but another one is coming right behind that one. So the secondary storm is about a 5-year gap in between these storms, right? So who knows who's going to make it through this second storm?
A couple things you said. We're going to need to hear what BP Earthwatch and a guy like Gil Broussard have to say. You just actually, in my spirit, just jumped when you said it. Probably I need to have a webinar, maybe a small BP Earthwatch, Gil Broussard, a couple more, just the top 5 or so, to really bear into this binary system situation with the sun and the effects on this planet and the sun. I think I better do it. I mean, you're throwing dates at me right here that's serious. So we're in a danger zone. Now let's talk about these meteorites, because it's 2025. I mean, we're going to have this meteor storm. We're already seeing more and more and more and more asteroids going by. So what happens when we get into it? When is this going to happen? Is this 2024, 2025, 26? What do you see?
There is no, we're looking at you're actually looking at a situation past where dates are not going to do people any good. Here's what's going to happen.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
We're going to have some example incursions that tear up some stuff, right? I wouldn't say a large loss of life, but there will be a loss of life. And from that point on, people are going to want answers. But here's what's going to happen. As soon as the first set or the first cluster breaches the atmosphere and actually makes landfall and fall in the ocean and land, you're going to have a billion experts out there who never discussed this topic. They're going to hop on every media platform and confuse the people.
Oh, wow.
Now, here's what it means. The source, because nobody's discussing this, right? They're going to jump in there and take the lead, and everybody's going to listen to them. But that's where they're going to make their mistake. And so anybody who can cover the subject now, not to so much speak about the theoretical sides of things, but to get people ready for the reality, right, of living in a time where this has actually happened. Because we've talked about how a lot of people are well informed about many different scenarios, right? But what about when it actually impacts? Then what?
Right.
Then what does a person do? What does a person do for their family in an environment where a few have hit and the atmosphere is changed? It hits a couple chemical plants. You have fires that won't go out, right? Sea levels start to alter, swish and swash, and all this, that, and the other. So people need to know this. Certain things are already prepared for that, and we're just talking about some impacts, right? Because I'll say it again, the first examples are coming. They're coming, right?
And so
we know they're going to cause volcanism. We know they're going to cause fires. This summer, we're going to deal with a lot of fires, things of that nature, right? So are the people well informed of how to still function? A world that's not going to end because a few of those hit, but it's going to scare people. It's going to change how they view the world. It's going to make some people uncomfortable, right? Then what? Do they have enough spiritual strength to stay rooted, to actually be of help to somebody else? Are they ready to face whatever it takes or whatever comes and still maintain their status, their state of faith in Christ? Or will they just fall apart, start listening to everybody else and be maneuvered into this new utopia everybody is starting to set up?
Wow. I mean, you're right. And so we have this a total shift of everything because of survival, because of the elitist group or the ruling class is trying to come up with a way to survive the apocalypse. They know it's coming. They can scientifically see it. We can spiritually see it. But they don't understand the source behind it all. Am I right? I mean, Christ,
right?
You know?
That's right. They have physical details, right? Things that'll happen physically. I mean, they paid all the archaeologists to dig up all this stuff. They're the ones that determine what people can read and what they can't read, right? They're responsible for what is distributed around the world and what is not. But again, when the first examples hit this earth, then what?
Right.
And we're in a new area there, and we know that people will. A lot of people will say, "Well, I need to go hear an expert in this." Sadly enough, that's when
The weirdest thing I've ever seen. All right. All right. I guess we're back. Let's see. Coming back. Yeah, we're back. I've never seen this. Hey, I shut a computer off. You know, when you shut it's still on. I mean, when we're back, they're saying we're back. So we're back. Okay, so Mike, is that even possible? Heidi shut it manually down. The entire computer goes off. That means whatever programs you're running, that's over. It's over. But no.
Well, evidently not.
I guess not. Well, anyway, Mike, where were we when we got thrown under the bus?
Well, I think we were talking about the necessity of covering the topic.
Okay.
Of living in that or occupying in that environment where these incursions begin to happen.
We talked about the sun, of course, losing its hydrogen and the photons being sucked out of it at a certain point. People are asking about the 3 days of darkness, which did happen in the days of Moses in Egypt. That's not, I don't know if that could even happen. Can you help us on that?
Well, you know what? There's I had a dream in before any of this, before Council of Time, before any of this stuff passed, Paul.
Okay.
And I found myself in darkness, right? I mean, it was dark. It was super dark. And I heard people saying, ask Mike, how long is this going to last? And a voice spoke to me and said 37 days, right? Here's the funny part. Before any of that happened, before I was in this blackness, this darkness, I heard a trumpet. But here's the odd part. This trumpet penetrated down in my bones and everything else. Now, this was before I had this level of heart for Christ.
Okay.
This is before any of that.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And people, I could never understand why people were asking me to tell them when the darkness would go away, right? But they did ask, and a voice told me to tell them 37 days.
37 days.
People were scared, but it was absolute darkness. I mean, it was absolute darkness. So concerning 3 days of darkness, I have no idea. But concerning the 37 days, I have that one reference that really disturbed me, right? I won't go into I told a couple of people about this about 15 years ago, right? And I even used a name that nobody used. The name that people use now to refer to me, I told them before I ever spoke to you, Pascal. And you gave that name, remember that?
I know. That's wild. That's why. Well, you saw me.
Those people know that. They know that. They know. They know that. And So there we are with that one. Now, can that literally take place? Sure it can, because in a binary system, there comes a point when the colder star begins to exchange power or energy with, the star you can see, and there is a photonic exchange, and it begins to essentially refuel itself from the bright star. They have observed this, right?
Yes.
So all the light is redirected to the colder star, because the colder star has much more mass, is very dense, and it starts to pull all that energy towards it. In fact, many solar flares will come off our sun going straight to this smaller sun. In that time period, though, there's no light reaching the Earth because all the photons are redirected. We will have infrared heat, right?
Yeah.
But we will not have, in the visible light spectrum that we can see, we won't have light. So they have observed that. And it is, that's if we are in a binary system, which I do 100% believe, we're going to have that issue. And it will last, it's not 3 days. That's going to last for a good month or so. That's a process that normally will last based on the orbits of those two stars, about a month or so. And here's the part of timing. If that star was far out there right now, right, the closer it gets to our sun, the faster it's going to double its speed. So if somebody ever observed, which they have, observed something out there, say 20 years ago, right, and they had a timetable of 100 years, then 5 years after that, the timetable is going to be 50 years. And then 2 years after that, the timetable is going to be, 20 years. And it's going to keep, getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter until they devote a laser rangefinders to actually see how close this thing is, right? That would take a dedicated system to do that. A transmission system of great magnitude. That's the only way you can tell absolute acceleration of a star like that. You have to have something close to a communication system. And guess what? We have a brand new one. We have a brand new one.
We do?
That has, oh yes, we have a massive communication transmission system that goes right out into space. Now, nobody has radios out there that requires, that much energy to be beamed out into space. We're talking about power higher than the power CERN generates.
Well, why are we sending radio waves or signals?
Because that's the only way. You know what? Some of these mysteries in the world, all people have to do is look back at some of the patents that were filed back in the 70s and 80s, right? Snag those patents, and that will tell you about the technology being used today. And when you look at some of the tech today, it will tell you about what's in certain places. And it's a perfect match. But most importantly, it will allow you to know what they're doing with it, right?
Wow.
Make a powerful transmission system that can only transmit into space. Because if they transmitted on the ground, it would fry everything on the surface of the Earth. They can't do that. It's going right out into space. And it's cooled by the ice, right, in the poles. That's how it's cooled, by the ice in the poles, which, by the way, is melting at an alarming rate. This machine is melting that ice every time they use it. And it goes off about probably, I think it's twice a minute. It sends out a burst twice a minute. Now, the reception of it is being received in West Virginia. One of the biggest satellites in the world is right in West Virginia. That's why they never speak of West Virginia too much. It is a reception hub, right?
I see.
One of the most technically advanced receivers is right there. In fact, there are a few secrets in West Virginia. But that's where it is. There's another place in New Mexico, Arecibo, of course, and there's another place in Colorado and one in Canada. And so they use these to receive anything that's been pulsed out like that, right? When they receive it, then they can tell the absolute distance and acceleration and other properties of stars, right? Stars are so bright sometimes, they're so different as far as their power. It takes different methods and techniques just to get the physics of that star, accurately, because they have to know exactly when this thing is going to impact the forces of Earth. but we're already seeing those impacts.
Yeah.
Right? That's why solar flares can be predictable, right? And I think now it's not a complete science, but I think so far there are people keeping count. I believe we've done this at least 30, 40 times, the correct date on the solar flares and CMEs and things like that. So it's not too bad of a system, to see that.
Well, no, I mean,
predictable.
you
predictable because of this other body out there.
Yeah, I mean, you just predicted that the event we had today at noon. You predicted
and
it,
the other one,
and the other one. So
they could be off a little bit, but they're generally right on the money.
Yeah,
the last one was right on the money. This one was a couple days off. So
yeah,
there we are.
So within 2-3 days, a day or so or whatever, these predictions of some massive explosion of solar activity on the sun is now being predicted. You're telling us in advance it's happening. This is quite extraordinary. This means we do have ability to gauge it, and it also proves that we know why it's happening.
Yep, it does.
Even if the public's not going to get an announcement, not tomorrow morning, they're not going to go on, CNN and announce to everybody that we know about this binary system. It's starting to shake up the universe. It's going to blow up the sun, or the sun's going to go crazy. It's going to affect the earth with all kind of traumatic storms and no, we're not going to get that. They're not going to say that. But obviously, as you're saying here, we know, we can see, and they're preparing. That's why there's underground. Let me ask you, how many nations of the world have underground cities in preparation for the apocalypse?
Well, China has a few.
Okay.
Russia certainly has theirs. They always prepare for the people. I know they're a communist country, but they want to preserve Mother Russia, so they always have their people informed. Europe has theirs. The U.S., of course, we have a lot. Germany, of course, they have a lot. Europe, South Korea, they have a few. So it's not a new concept. It's a very old concept, and to be a little more open, in a lot of cases, it was Germany and India who shared with the world that there were underground cities. Right? They haven't really told everybody about the underground cities that are 5,000 years old, right? Cities that old. By the way, they keep time. So they're very old cities. And we're talking about cavernous systems. For example, in Fort Hood, Texas, there's an underground place that will blow your mind.
Really?
It'll blow your mind. It'll blow your mind.
I mean, is it part of the military there at Fort Hood?
It'll blow your mind. And the entry... Nobody's going to accidentally get into these places.
Okay.
In Nebraska, right? In Arkansas, places like that, you'd be surprised how many cornfields can open up.
What?
Can really open up. Yeah, there are giant doors in those places. They can open up.
Right in the middle of a cornfield?
From Germany. Even Saddam Hussein had that. Saddam Hussein had a mile wide door that would open up and shut in the desert. Right, so we have those too, but they're obscured by fields that you can actually drive over, but they can open up. So we have quite a few places like that over here, right? I'm sure that people have seen the videos of truck drivers driving in underground places where they have, pretty strong security and weird symbols they show. I'm sure that if people heard two governors. They talked about the underground transit system that travels at the same speed that an aircraft does, right? Aircrafts travel at about 500 miles an hour.
I mean, that's unbelievable.
And they leaked that out. That was at the beginning of the year, right? They leaked that out, and I got nervous. When I heard it, because somebody said, "Hey, Mike, listen to this." Listen to what? And so I'm hearing them talking, and they were sitting there talking about it, right?
Almost like bullet trains underground, but it's a speed of 500, 600 miles an hour.
They told everything, right? Think of a pod, kind of like what people call a tic tac.
Yep.
In a vacuum chamber.
Yep.
That's what it's like, right? In a vacuum chamber, and so just like that. But they were talking about this openly, saying that they're going to put new linkage into this state and that state. And I couldn't believe it. But I never heard it again. I heard it that one time. Never heard it again. So anyway, yeah, they have transit systems and they have that. Why? Because even in the Bible it says they're going to go hide in the dens of
Amen.
the caves and the mountains and dens of the rocks, because they're going to save themselves.
That's
They
right.
know what's coming. They dug up all the proof. Right? They have every archaeological find out there. They paid the people to go get this stuff. The governments did. They have all the findings. They have all the brightest students that ever was. They recruit from MIT, PA, and all these different places, UCLA. They do this continually so people can back engineer things. Right? They're in a fight right now in Congress and the Senate to put the information out there to people, and then the other side says no because they can't make enough money off of it yet, or something like that. So once it all comes out, it's going to be a not so interesting topic. Why? Because they're going to be control of